The 1970s were a turbulent decade for the automotive industry. The fuel crisis, tightening emissions regulations, and rising insurance premiums forced automakers to cut costs in corners, resulting in a wave of poorly designed, underpowered, and unreliable vehicles. Many of these cars were relegated to the bottom of the used car market, making them accessible to low-income buyers, but at a hefty cost in maintenance and headaches. Here are 10 of the most disappointing cars of the 1970s that became staples of the poor man's driveway.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 10. 1970 Plymouth Duster. The 1970 Plymouth Duster was introduced as a sporty and compact addition to Plymouth's lineup. Built on the Valiant platform, the Duster was designed to appeal to younger buyers looking for style and performance at a reasonable price. However, the base model was far from sporty, leaving much to be desired for anyone hoping for an exciting driving experience. While higher trims like the 340 Duster were well regarded for their performance, the base Duster offered only a weak engine and bare-bones features, making it one of the least inspiring choices in its class. The base Duster was equipped with the 225 cubic inch, 3.7-liter, slant-six engine, producing 145 horsepower and 215 pound-feet of torque. While this engine was known for its reliability and durability, it was not designed for performance. Acceleration was sluggish, and the car felt underpowered, especially when compared to its V8-equipped siblings or competitors like the Ford Maverick. The base Duster's inline-six struggled to deliver exciting performance, with a 0 to 60 miles per hour time exceeding 14 seconds, depending on the configuration. For a car marketed as sporty, this level of performance was disappointing. While the Slant 6 offered decent fuel economy, it came at the cost of any semblance of sportiness. Buyers looking for an engaging driving experience were left unsatisfied, as the base Duster felt more like a practical economy car than a fun compact. The Duster's styling borrowed heavily from the Valiant, with minor updates to give it a sportier look. While higher trims featured bold graphics and sporty details, the base model was stripped down, with plain steel wheels, basic trim, and no standout features to distinguish it from its economy car roots. Inside, the base Duster was as minimal as it got. The vinyl bench seats and simple dashboard layout were functional, but far from exciting. There were few amenities, with even basic features like a radio or carpeted flooring often optional. The 1970 Duster was marketed as a sporty, budget-friendly car, but the base model didn't deliver on the sportiness buyers expected. It was affordable, but its lack of power and bland styling made it feel like a compromise rather than a choice. Competitors like the Ford Maverick and Chevrolet Nova offered similar practicality, but often included more powerful options or better styling in their base trims. For buyers focused on performance or flair, the base Duster simply didn't measure up. While the Duster 340 became a classic for its impressive performance and sporty image, the base model was largely ignored by enthusiasts and critics alike. It served as a reliable, economical car, but lacked any of the characteristics that made the Duster name memorable. Today, the base Duster remains one of the least collectible versions of the model. Enthusiasts typically seek out the 340 or V8-powered trims, leaving the base Slant 6 models as an afterthought in the history of compact muscle cars. The 1970 Plymouth Duster base model was an affordable and practical car, but it lacked the performance, style, and excitement to live up to its sporty marketing. Equipped with an underwhelming Slant 6 engine and stripped-down features, it was a far cry from the higher performance trims that gave the Duster its reputation. For budget-conscious buyers seeking reliability, the base Duster sufficed, but for anyone looking for fun or flair, it was slow, uninspired, and forgettable. Number 9. 1973 Dodge Dart Swinger. The 1973 Dodge Dart Swinger aimed to add a touch of sporty flair to Dodge's compact lineup with its eye-catching trim name. However, the base model Swinger failed to deliver on its promise of excitement. With its bland design, uninspired interiors, and underwhelming performance, the Dart Swinger base model served more as an economical choice than the lively vehicle its name suggested. By the early 1970s, the Dart's platform was showing its age. making it a tough sell in a market increasingly filled with newer and more refined competitors. The base Swinger was equipped with the 225 cubic inch, 3.7-liter slant 6, a reliable but dull performer. With just 105 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque, acceleration was sluggish, especially for a car marketed as sporty, while a 318 cubic inch, 5.2-liter V8 was available. It wasn't much better in the base model configuration, offering only modest power and poor fuel economy. The extra weight also hurt handling, making the car feel clunky. With a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of around 14 seconds, the Swinger base model was no match for sportier rivals or even some compact sedans. Its lack of responsiveness left it feeling outdated in an era when small cars were expected to deliver sharper performance. By 1973, the Dart's design had changed little from earlier years. While Dodge updated the front grille and rear lights, the overall look was boxy and uninspired. The base Swinger lacked the sporty touches of higher trims, leaving it looking more like an economy car than a performance coupe. The base Swinger's interior featured plain vinyl bench seats and minimal trim. The dashboard was functional but outdated, and the lack of standard features such as air conditioning or a quality sound system made it feel cheap. Unlike its higher trims, which offered bucket seats, rally wheels, and more vibrant paint options, the base Swinger lacked anything to make it memorable. The Dart Swinger base model struggled to compete against fresher designs like the Ford Maverick or even its cousin, the Plymouth Duster. These models offered similar reliability with more modern styling and better value for money. The Swinger name implied sportiness, but the base model didn't deliver. Buyers looking for a sporty compact were left disappointed, while those seeking practicality could find better-equipped rivals at similar prices. The Dart Swinger 340 and other performance-oriented trims gained a modest following among enthusiasts, but the base model was largely ignored. It was viewed as a practical but unremarkable option, offering none of the fun or flair suggested by its name. Today, the 1973 Dart Swinger base model is one of the least collectible darts of the era. Its lack of distinctive features and uninspired performance mean it's rarely sought after, even among classic car enthusiasts. The 1973 Dodge Dart Swinger base model was a car that failed to live up to its flashy name. With weak engines, an outdated design, and bare-bones features, it served as an economical but uninspired choice in the compact car market. While reliable, it lacked the performance and style needed to compete with rivals, making it a forgettable entry in the Dart lineup. For budget-conscious buyers, it was practical, but far from swinging. Number 8. 1974 Buick Apollo. The 1974 Buick Apollo was Buick's foray into the compact car market based on GM's X-Body platform, shared with the Chevrolet Nova. Positioned as an entry-level Buick, the Apollo attempted to deliver a mix of economy and luxury. However, it ended up feeling like a rebranded Nova with a few extra chrome accents. The Apollo's uninspired styling, mediocre performance, and lack of identity resulted in a car that failed to stand out in a crowded field of compact competitors. The Apollo came with a 250 cubic inch 4.1-liter inline six as its base engine, producing a paltry 100 horsepower. This engine struggled to move the car with any enthusiasm, leading to slow acceleration and a lackluster driving experience. Buyers could upgrade to either a 305 cubic inch or 5.0-liter or 350 cubic inch or 5.7-liter V8, but these engines were detuned due to emissions regulations, delivering unimpressive performance relative to their size. The added weight further diminished handling. The Apollo shared its underpinnings with the Nova, but Buick made no significant improvements to the suspension or steering. As a result, the car felt disconnected on the road, with vague steering and excessive body roll. Despite being marketed as a compact car, the Apollo's larger engines and outdated platform made it inefficient compared to rivals like the Ford Pinto and Dodge Dart, especially during the early days of the 1970s fuel crisis. The Apollo borrowed heavily from the Nova's design, adding little to distinguish itself. Its proportions were awkward, and the styling lacked the elegance typically associated with Buick. While Buick tried to maintain its luxury image, the Apollo's interior was far from premium. The vinyl seats and plastic dashboard were uninspiring, and standard features were minimal. Buick positioned the Apollo as an upscale compact, but it looked and felt too similar to the Nova, offering little reason for buyers to pay extra for the Buick badge. The Apollo was more expensive than its Nova counterpart, but it failed to offer significant advantages in performance, comfort, or style. Buick's typical buyers sought luxury and performance, while compact buyers prioritized economy and practicality. The Apollo appealed to neither group, leaving it stuck in an awkward middle ground. Competing compact cars like the Dodge Dart, Ford Maverick, and Chevrolet Vega offered similar or better value, making the Apollo an easy model to overlook. The Apollo failed to gain traction in the compact segment and was quickly replaced by the Buick Skylark in 1975. Today, the Apollo is largely forgotten, overshadowed by both the Nova it was based on and Buick's more successful models. Even among enthusiasts, the Apollo garners little interest due to its lack of performance and uninspired design. The 1974 Buick Apollo was an uninspired attempt by Buick to enter the compact car market. With underpowered engines, bland styling, and a lack of clear purpose, it failed to resonate with buyers. Positioned as a slightly upscale alternative to the Chevrolet Nova, the Apollo offered little to justify its higher price tag. It was a forgettable misstep in Buick's history, quickly overshadowed by more refined and competitive compact cars. Number 7, 1973 Pontiac Ventura. The 1973 Pontiac Ventura was Pontiac's version of GM's X-Body platform, essentially a rebadged Chevrolet Nova with minimal changes. It was Pontiac's entry into the compact segment, targeting buyers looking for affordable, no-frills transportation. However, the Ventura's uninspired performance, bare-bones features, and lack of a distinctive identity left it overshadowed by both its Nova sibling and competitors in the segment. The entry-level Ventura was equipped with a 250 cubic inch, 4.1-liter inline-six engine producing just 100 horsepower. This engine struggled to deliver even modest acceleration, making the car feel sluggish in city and highway driving. Buyers could upgrade to a 350 cubic inch, 5.7-liter V8, but the detuned engine's performance was disappointing compared to earlier years due to stricter emission standards. The Ventura inherited the Nova's suspension and steering setup, which offered little in terms of refinement. Handling was unremarkable, with body roll and vague steering detracting from the driving experience. The Ventura shared nearly identical body panels with the Nova, differentiated only by a new grille and Pontiac badging. The design was bland and uninspired, lacking any distinctive Pontiac flair. The interior was utilitarian, with vinyl bench seats and minimal features. Build quality was mediocre, with cheap materials that wore down quickly. Pontiac attempted to position the Ventura as a sporty compact, but the base model lacked any aesthetic or performance elements to justify that claim. The Ventura was more expensive than the Chevrolet Nova, despite offering no real improvements in performance, quality, or design. Competing cars like the Ford Maverick, Dodge Dart, and even the Nova itself offered similar or better value, making the Ventura an afterthought for most buyers. Pontiac was known for performance-oriented cars like the GTO and Firebird. The Ventura's uninspired base model clashed with this image, leaving it without a clear target audience. Unlike other Pontiacs from the era, the Ventura is not sought after by collectors, especially in its base configuration. Its lack of performance and visual appeal limits its desirability. The Ventura never managed to step out of the Nova's shadow, and most people remember it as little more than a rebranded version of Chevrolet's compact offering. The Ventura nameplate would later be replaced by more focused Pontiac models, but its early years remain a weak point in Pontiac's lineup. The 1973 Pontiac Ventura base model was a bland, uninspired compact car that offered little to distinguish itself from its Chevrolet Nova sibling. With weak engines, unremarkable styling, and cheap interiors, it struggled to make an impact in the crowded compact car market. It was yet another example of GM's excessive badge engineering during the 1970s, ultimately failing to live up to Pontiac's reputation for excitement and performance. Number 6. 1978 Chrysler Cordoba. The 1978 Chrysler Cordoba was part of Chrysler's attempt to blend personal luxury with affordability, targeting middle-class buyers who desired upscale styling without a hefty price tag. However, while it was marketed as a luxury car, the base trim Cordoba was plagued by lackluster performance, mechanical issues, and subpar build quality, making it a frustrating choice for buyers expecting more refinement. The entry-level Cordoba was powered by a 225 cubic inch, 3.7-liter slant 6, producing a meager 110 horsepower. This engine struggled to move the heavy Cordoba, leading to sluggish acceleration and poor highway performance. Buyers could opt for the 318 cubic inch, 5.2-liter V8 or the 360 cubic inch, 5.9-liter V8. But even these engines were detuned due to emissions regulations, offering underwhelming performance with mediocre fuel economy. The Cordoba's suspension favored comfort over control, resulting in excessive body roll, numb steering, and a boat-like driving experience. While Chrysler's advertising emphasized Corinthian leather and upscale styling, the Cordoba's exterior design, with its opera windows and chrome trim, bordered on gaudy rather than truly luxurious. The base trim featured cheap materials despite the luxurious image. Vinyl upholstery was standard, and the overall fit and finish often fell short of buyers' expectations. By 1978, the Cordoba's styling was beginning to feel dated, overshadowed by more modern competitors like the Chevrolet Monte Carlo and Ford Thunderbird. The Cordoba was notorious for mechanical failures, including transmission issues and electrical system malfunctions, which undermined its luxury pretensions. Rust was a persistent issue, particularly in regions with harsh winters, accelerating the car's decline in value. Like many cars of the late 1970s, the Cordoba suffered from poor fuel efficiency, with single-digit MPG figures, common for its larger engine options. Chrysler's aggressive marketing promised a luxurious experience, but the base Cordoba failed to deliver the refinement or reliability needed to justify its image. Competitors like the Buick Regal, Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, and Ford Thunderbird offered more style, performance, and comfort for a similar price, leaving the Cordoba struggling to stand out. The Cordoba appealed to buyers looking for status on a budget, but its lack of performance and quality quickly turned off those who expected a true luxury car. The Cordoba is perhaps best remembered for its advertising campaigns featuring Ricardo Montalban, extolling the virtues of soft Corinthian leather. This marketing gimmick created unrealistic expectations, leading to buyer disappointment. While some higher-trim Cordobas have a niche following today, the base model remains largely overlooked due to its uninspiring performance and quality. The Cordoba epitomized the compromises of the 1970s American auto industry, prioritizing appearance over substance to cope with tightening regulations and shifting market demands. The 1978 Chrysler Cordoba, base trim, was a car that promised luxury but delivered mediocrity. With weak engines, poor reliability, and gaudy styling, it failed to live up to its image as an affordable luxury car. While its advertising created a lasting impression, the reality of owning a base Cordoba was far less glamorous. Number 5. 1976 Chevrolet Malibu. The 1976 Chevrolet Malibu represented Chevrolet's attempt to capture the midsize car market with an affordable and practical option. Unfortunately, the base model fell short in multiple areas, offering bland styling, unimpressive performance, and an uncomfortable ride. At a time when competitors like the Ford Granada and Dodge Aspen were gaining traction, the base Malibu struggled to make an impression. The entry-level Malibu came equipped with a 250 cubic inch, 4.1-liter inline-six, producing just 105 horsepower. The engine was noisy, lacked refinement, and struggled to provide adequate acceleration, especially when carrying passengers or cargo. While a 305 cubic inch, 5.0-liter V8 was available, it didn't add much excitement due to emissions controls, producing only 140 horsepower. Fuel economy remained poor despite the reduced power. The combination of a heavy curb weight and underpowered engines resulted in sluggish acceleration, making the Malibu feel unresponsive and slow, particularly on highways. The Malibu's exterior design was plain and lacked the bold lines or character that buyers sought in the mid-1970s. The flat body panels, generic grille, and uninspired proportions made it blend into the background. The interior was utilitarian, with vinyl upholstery, basic controls, and minimal features. While this kept costs down, it made the car feel cheap and outdated compared to rivals. The suspension was tuned for comfort, but failed to deliver. The car had excessive body roll in corners, and bumps were poorly absorbed, leading to a jarring ride. The steering was imprecise and felt disconnected, making the Malibu awkward to drive, especially in tight spaces. The cabin suffered from excessive road noise and vibrations, further detracting from the driving experience. Like many cars of the era, the Malibu was prone to rust, particularly around the wheel arches and undercarriage. While the inline-six engine was relatively simple, it wasn't immune to problems such as oil leaks and timing chain wear, which required frequent maintenance. The lack of modern features such as power steering or air conditioning, standard on higher trims or competitors, made the base model feel outdated. Rivals like the Ford Granada and Dodge Aspen offered more stylish designs and better ride quality at a similar price point, leaving the Malibu to languish in the shadows. The base Malibu was often relegated to fleet and rental use, cementing its reputation as a no-frills, forgettable car. Chevrolet had the opportunity to leverage the Malibu's mid-size platform for a better driving, more appealing car, but instead focused on keeping costs low to the detriment of quality and desirability. The 1976 Malibu base model has virtually no appeal among collectors, as it lacks performance, style, or innovation. The base Malibu became emblematic of the compromises made by American automakers during the Malaise era, prioritizing cost-cutting over engineering excellence or consumer satisfaction. The 1976 Chevrolet Malibu, base model, was an uninspiring entry in Chevrolet's lineup, offering little to excite buyers. With mediocre performance, bland styling, and uncomfortable ride quality, it failed to stand out in a crowded midsize market. While practical and affordable, its shortcomings made it a forgettable car even in its own time. Number 4, 1974 AMC Matador Sedan. The 1974 AMC Matador Sedan epitomized the challenges faced by American Motors Corporation during the Malaise era. Aimed at the mid-size car market, the Matador was intended to compete with stalwarts like the Chevrolet Chevelle and Ford Torino. Unfortunately, the sedan's bland design, poor build quality, and underwhelming performance left it struggling to find a loyal following. The Matador sedan came equipped with a 232 cubic inch, 3.8-liter inline-six, producing 100 horsepower. While reliable, this engine was underpowered for the car's size, resulting in sluggish acceleration and poor highway performance. Buyers could upgrade to a 304 cubic inch 5.0-liter V8 or 360 cubic inch 5.9-liter V8, but these options were hampered by emissions restrictions and delivered unimpressive power-to-weight ratios. Even with the inline-six, the Matador struggled with fuel economy, averaging around 12 to 15 miles per gallon, a significant drawback during the fuel crisis of the 1970s. The sedan's styling was generic, with flat, uninspired body panels and a forgettable grille. It lacked the boldness of its competitors and failed to stand out on the road. The Matador's boxy silhouette and overhang-heavy design made it look bulky and clumsy, especially when compared to more streamlined rivals. The cabin featured cheap materials, basic vinyl upholstery, and minimal amenities. Its design felt outdated even by 1974 standards, making the Matador feel more utilitarian than appealing. While the suspension was tuned for comfort, it resulted in excessive body roll and poor handling. The car felt unwieldy in corners and lacked precision. Road noise and vibrations were prominent in the cabin, further detracting from the driving experience. The drum brakes on the base model were prone to fading under heavy use, compromising safety and performance. Owners reported misaligned body panels, rattling interiors, and uneven paint quality. These issues reflected AMC's struggles with manufacturing consistency. Despite its simplicity, the Matador's components were prone to wear, including suspension parts, door handles, and electrical systems, leading to frequent maintenance headaches. Like many cars of its era, the Matador sedan was highly susceptible to rust, particularly around the wheel wells and undercarriage. The Matador lacked the refinement, performance, or innovative features to lure buyers away from better established rivals like the Ford Torino or Chevrolet Chevelle. Due to its affordability and simplicity, the sedan became a popular choice for fleet use, e.g. taxis and government vehicles, further diminishing its appeal to private buyers. The Matador Coupe, introduced in 1974, featured bold and polarizing styling, overshadowing the sedan's dull design and reinforcing its reputation as the less desirable model. The 1974 Matador sedan holds little appeal among enthusiasts or collectors, as it lacks the performance, style, or historical significance of other AMC models. The Matador sedan highlighted AMC's inability to compete effectively in the midsize market, serving as a reminder of the company's limited resources and design missteps. The 1974 AMC Matador sedan was a middling effort in a highly competitive segment. With its bland styling, underwhelming performance, and quality issues, it failed to resonate with buyers. While practical and affordable, it lacked the refinement and appeal needed to stand out, making it a largely forgotten relic of the 1970s automotive landscape. Number 3. 1971 Dodge Polara. The 1971 Dodge Polara was Chrysler's attempt to compete in the full-size sedan market against more popular rivals like the Chevrolet Impala and Ford Galaxy. Unfortunately, it fell short due to its dated design, lackluster performance, and poor build quality. While the Polara had a spacious interior and a variety of engine options, its shortcomings outweighed its strengths, leaving it an undesirable choice for many buyers. The Polara's entry-level engine was a 225 cubic inch, 3.7-liter slant 6, which produced a meager 145 horsepower. This engine struggled to move the car's large frame, resulting in sluggish acceleration and poor highway performance. Buyers could opt for larger V8 engines, including a 318 cubic inch or 383 cubic inch. But even these options were tuned for efficiency rather than performance, leaving the Polara feeling underpowered for its size. With rising gas prices in the early 1970s, the Polara's poor fuel economy, averaging 10 to 12 miles per gallon, made it an impractical choice for budget-conscious buyers. The Polara's bulky body and long overhangs gave it an outdated look, especially compared to the sleeker designs of its competitors. Dodge made few changes to the Polara's styling for 1971, giving the impression that it was already behind the times in a rapidly evolving market. The interior featured cheap materials like vinyl and plastic, with minimal attention to design or comfort. The lack of modern amenities made the car feel bare bones, even for its era. While the suspension provided a comfortable ride, it also resulted in poor handling with excessive body roll and a disconnected feel on the road. The Polara came standard with drum brakes, which were prone to fading and inadequate for stopping the car's large, heavy frame. Drivers reported a lack of precision in the steering and noticeable road noise in the cabin, making long trips less enjoyable. The base slant 6 engine, while generally reliable in other applications, was under stress in the Polara and prone to overheating and valve problems. Owners frequently encountered issues with the Polara's wiring and electrical components, leading to problems with lights and ignition systems. Rust was a major problem for the Polara, particularly around the wheel arches and undercarriage, further diminishing its long-term appeal. The Polara struggled to compete with the more stylish and better-equipped Chevrolet Impala and Ford Galaxy, which offered superior performance and reliability. Due to its affordability, the Polara was often used as a fleet vehicle for taxis and government services, which hurt its desirability among private buyers. By the early 1970s, Dodge was struggling with quality control issues, and the Polara became a symbol of the company's inability to keep pace with industry trends. The 1971 Polara holds little value among collectors, as it lacks the performance, styling, or historical significance of other Dodge models from the era. The Polara is more likely to be remembered as a government vehicle or taxi than as a desirable full-size sedan. The 1971 Dodge Polara was a disappointing entry in the full-size sedan market. Its uninspired design, lackluster performance, and reliability issues made it uncompetitive against better offerings from Chevrolet, Ford, and even Chrysler's own Plymouth division. For buyers seeking affordable transportation, the Polara's flaws often made it more of a liability than a bargain. Number 2, 1972 Oldsmobile Omega. The 1972 Oldsmobile Omega, introduced as Oldsmobile's version of GM's X-Body platform, was a compact car aimed at competing with other economical options of the time. Despite being a new model, it offered little to distinguish itself from its corporate siblings, the Chevrolet Nova, Pontiac Ventura, and Buick Apollo. With uninspired design, weak engine choices, and lackluster handling, the Omega quickly became another forgettable entry in GM's sprawling lineup. The standard engine in the Omega was a 250 cubic inch 4.1-liter inline-six, producing a modest 110 horsepower. While adequate for basic commuting, it felt sluggish and strained under load. The optional 307 cubic inch 5.0-liter V8 and 350 cubic inch 5.7-liter V8 offered slightly better performance, but came at a higher cost, making them rare choices in the base trim. Even with these engines, the Omega wasn't particularly fast or exciting to drive. With rising gas prices in the early 1970s, the Omega's fuel economy was underwhelming compared to competitors like the Ford Maverick or Toyota Corona. The Omega was nearly identical to the Chevrolet Nova, with only minor differences in grille design, badging, and trim. This lack of uniqueness made it hard to stand out in a crowded market. The interior was as basic as it could get, with cheap materials and minimal features. Vinyl bench seats, a simple dashboard, and lack of modern amenities made the car feel dated even at launch. The Omega's boxy, uninspired styling failed to excite buyers looking for a car with personality or flair. While the suspension provided a comfortable ride on smooth roads, it led to poor handling, with noticeable body roll during cornering. The manual steering in the base model felt heavy and unrefined, making the car feel disconnected from the road. Drum brakes came standard, offering mediocre stopping power for a car of its size and weight. Owners frequently reported issues with the carburetor and ignition system, leading to rough idling and occasional stalling. Like many GM cars of the era, the Omega was prone to rust, particularly around the wheel wells and undercarriage, which significantly reduced its lifespan. The Omega also suffered from problems with its electrical system, including faulty alternators and wiring issues. The Omega struggled to differentiate itself from its sibling models. The Chevrolet Nova, with its broader appeal and name recognition, dominated sales. Buyers looking for a compact car often turned to more innovative options like the Ford Pinto or imports such as the Volkswagen Beetle, which offered better fuel economy and a more engaging driving experience. Oldsmobile was traditionally associated with luxury and performance, but the Omega failed to deliver on either front, confusing buyers about its purpose in the lineup. The 1972 Omega is rarely sought after by collectors due to its bland design and lack of historical significance. Today, many surviving Omegas are used for parts to restore more popular X-body models like the Nova. The 1972 Oldsmobile Omega base model was a half-hearted attempt by GM to expand its compact car offerings. With uninspired styling, weak engines, and lackluster handling, the Omega failed to carve out a unique identity in a highly competitive market. For buyers at the time, it was simply another uninspired option in GM's crowded lineup, and it remains largely forgotten today. Number 1, 1970 Ford Torino. The 1970 Ford Torino, while part of Ford's lineup of mid-size muscle cars, failed to live up to the expectations set by its higher trims like the GT and Cobra. The base model of the Torino was plagued by underpowered engines, poor build quality, and lackluster styling, making it an uninspiring choice for those seeking performance or reliability. It lacked the muscle car appeal that the Torino's more powerful variants offered, and instead it was relegated to being a mediocre offering in Ford's lineup. The base Torino came with a 250 cubic inch 4.1-liter inline-six, producing only 155 horsepower, which was woefully underpowered compared to the GT and Cobra versions. While sufficient for daily driving, it failed to deliver any of the performance that the Torino was supposed to represent. While a 302 cubic inch 5.0-liter V8 was available as an upgrade, it was still modest in terms of output, offering only around 210 horsepower. This V8 option was a slight improvement, but still underwhelming in a car that could have benefited from a more powerful engine in the base trim. The base Torino's lack of engine options meant it was stuck between two worlds, too slow to be a true muscle car and too large to be considered an economy vehicle. While the Torino had a generally sleek mid-size car design, the base trim lacked the sporty details that made the GT and Cobra trim stand out. It had plain steel wheels, basic trim, and no performance styling cues, making it look almost identical to a base Ford Fairlane. Unlike the higher performance models, the base Torino had minimal chrome accents, and the overall design did little to draw attention. The muscle car essence was missing, leaving it as a forgettable, run-of-the-mill vehicle. Reports of poor build quality and inconsistent fitment of parts were common. Loose panels, misaligned trim, and interior rattles were frequent complaints, making the car feel less solid than its more expensive counterparts. Like many cars of the 1960s era, the Torino was prone to rust issues, especially around the wheel wells and undercarriage, which led to higher maintenance costs for owners who kept the car for longer periods. While the engine and drivetrain were relatively simple, they were still prone to issues with ignition systems, cooling systems, and braking components, making reliability a concern for owners on a budget. The base Torino was equipped with a soft suspension, which offered a comfortable ride but compromised handling and cornering ability. It felt sluggish and uninspired compared to sportier versions of the car. The steering in the base model was vague and unresponsive, making the car feel disconnected from the road, especially when compared to higher performance models. With its underpowered engine and unrefined suspension, the base Torino didn't have the performance or driving excitement that made muscle cars desirable. The base Torino failed to stand out in a market that was increasingly driven by performance, as it lacked the features and power that made the GT and Cobra trims more desirable. Many potential buyers looking for a sporty Ford turned to the Mustang, which offered better performance in a smaller, more nimble package. The Torino was positioned as a mid-size muscle car, but it didn't offer the thrills that its rivals, including the Chevrolet Chevelle or Plymouth Roadrunner, could provide. The base model's pricing was competitive, but for the same price, buyers could often get a more refined or better performing car, leaving the base Torino without much market traction. The base 1970 Torino has little appeal in the collector's market. It lacks the performance and distinctive styling of the GT and Cobra trims, and many surviving base models have been lost to rust or forgotten over time. For those seeking a Torino to restore, the base model is often viewed as a parts car for more desirable trims, and it is rarely sought after in its original condition. The 1970 Ford Torino base trim is often considered a missed opportunity in Ford's muscle car lineup. With its underpowered engines, uninspiring styling, and poor build quality, it failed to live up to the performance-oriented image that the Torino name later became known for. Despite its status as a cheap entry-level model, it lacked the excitement and appeal that would have made it competitive in the burgeoning muscle car market. Ultimately, the base Torino was a forgettable car, overshadowed by its more powerful siblings and competitors.